Hello, today we're going to learn how to write from a Java frame into a SQL database. We're also going to make sure that our database is correctly populated by ensuring that items like publisher code and type, which have a distinct list of options, are available for the user to pick. I'm also going to verify at least one of our field names are the correct, like in the book code, and make sure that it's precisely 4 characters long, and I'm going to ensure that it's uppercase. I'm going to do all this work in Java so when I run the insert into command, it correctly posts into MySQL without issues. To start, you should build a JFrame project and populate it like I have mine. I've got labels over here that describe what's on the right. Each one of these white boxes is a text field that I've named things like book code box and book title box. These are my combo boxes. I've named them publisher combo, type combo, and this is a checkbox that I got rid of the text on and I called paperback box. This is a simple button that I have named save button. Take a moment, do that, pause if you need to, because I'm just going to forge on at this point, assuming you have it. So we wrote in an earlier lab, we wrote the Henry Connect code that connected our GUI screen to Henry. The connection code doesn't change. So I'm going to go to the Henry GUI app that we wrote a while ago. I'm going to copy all of my imports and move over to my new form and paste those imports in there. I'm going to go back to that original Henry GUI project. I'm going to copy these lines, those SQL lines. I'm going to put them in the same place. And I'm going to go back to my Henry GUI. I'm going to find my connect database method. And I'm going to copy that and paste it up here in new book. So this stuff doesn't change from connection to connection, so I'm just going to reuse it. I'm going to call connect database here in init components. Connect database, as you see, connects to your MySQL. We already know it sets the title to be connected, it has the driver, it has everything, we already know how it works. I'm going to connect my database. And just to verify that it works, I'm going to immediately close down here. And it's going to want to be surrounded by something. So I'm going to surround it by a try-catch. Do a quick run. Make sure that my database is alive and connected. Yes, I'm connected. Okay, good. So I'm going to get rid of this for now. This is just proof to me that my connection works. If that didn't work, you'd have to go make sure that MySQL is up in XAMPP, and you'd have to connect to it with the shell. And make sure that the stuff is here. All this we did in the earlier lessons. What I would need to do next is I need to get this publisher code and this type to be populated with the new items. Type is going to come from book. Those are my types. Sci-fi, horror, fic, art. I could just type those in. There's only 12 of them. But in reality, there's 200 or 300 different types that change periodically. So you don't want to type this stuff. You want to pull it from your database. I'm going to fix my query and sort. And so now it's in alphabetical order. When I'm done, this list will be in my combo box. So go back to my code. I'm going to go to my source. I'm going to create a new method called fill combos. And this method is going to fill both the publisher and the type. I'm going to do the type first because it's easier. I'm going to connect to the database, and then down here, I'm going to close. And again, it wants to be surrounded. If something happens, I'm really confused, so I'm going to throw my error here. And I'll simply output a message telling me why it didn't close. I can't imagine why it wouldn't close, but it still wants to be surrounded with a try catch. Inside of this, between this connect and this try, I'm going to build a model for the type, walk through the results, and populate the list. So I need to build a default combo box. I'm going to cast it to string because it's generic, and if it's angry, I'll fix imports. Doesn't look like it's angry. I'll build my string to connect. Distinct might be a new keyword for you. It simply lists one of the many repetitions that are in there. So instead of getting 15 mix and 75 sci-fis, it just gets one of each. I'm going to need a string variable to hold on to one of these things. It's going to be a type, so I'm going to call it a type, and I'm going to clear my model. This will have the effect of wiping out the item 1, item 2, item 3 that's in the list currently, and it will allow me to fill it with the ones that I want. I'm now going to run the SQL statement. I'm going to hit yelled at. Again, I'm going to call execute query. Execute query in this case is used to run the SQL. It's angry. I'm going to surround this statement with a try catch. And I'm going to take my option pane for my other one and put it in its place. And now I'm going to walk through the results. I'm going to pull out of the results the field type. I'll add it to my model. And if I've done everything correctly, run this thing. No. Oops. The reason it didn't populate is I forgot to call fill combos. I'll do that down here right after init components. Run it now. There we go. And those come directly out of the database. Yes, we could type these 12, but it's better to pull it from a database. I now need to do the same thing with my items. To do so, I need a new class because I'm going to pull everything from publisher. I want the publisher code and the publisher name. I don't care about the city, so I'm not going to use it. I'm going to build a class for publisher code and publisher name, and then populate the dropdown with that class. This is the most correct way to do this, and as you move forwards, this is how we're going to set this up. So I'm going to build myself a new Java class. I'm going to call it publisher. In my class, I'm going to create values for my objects. Now, I happen to know the string, but if you don't know what they are, you can, in MySQL, you can type describe command, and that'll give you the table structure. It's a lot like in SQL Server when you right-click and you design. So I see that they're all chars, so I can just use strings. So I'm going to only use pub code and pub name. I could add city here, but since I know I'm not going to use it in here, I'm just not going to bother. I'm going to insert code. I'm going to create constructors. I'll just create the default one just in case you need it. I'll create the parameterized one, which is probably what I'll use. And create setters and getters. I'm going to insert a toString because I need that. Whatever the results of the toString are what's going to appear in the combo box. All I'm going to have it say is the publisher name. Beautiful. I have a class. Again, building a class to read from a table result is the right way to do this as we move forward. Close some additional windows that I don't need. Okay, so I'm going to use that publisher up here in fill combos to generate a list of publishers. My design screen, I need to make some changes. Pub code is currently a string, so I need to go to my design box, select my publisher combo, click here on the model, the ellipses next to the model, and wipe this stuff out. Once you've done that, you also need to change this from a string model to a publisher model. You do that under the code entry. And up here it says type parameters where it says string. Make it say publisher in the angle brackets because it's the type. This allows me now to build my custom model that's going to hold objects of type publisher, which will allow me to have the publisher name and the publisher code without having to if anything. So back in fill combos, before I close, I'm going to fill the publisher box. I'll create a publisher, and I'll rewrite my SQL. So I'll select my publisher code, publisher name from publisher, order by publisher name, just because humans like things alphabetic order. If you're ever not sure about something, test your query. So I copy my code, paste it over here. Voila, it works. If it gives you an error, your Java won't work. This JFrame pane will fire. So it makes sense to test your SQL prior to using it. So I got my SQL. I now need to fill the combo box model. Again, I'll use the default combo box model. Got to cast it up to publisher. And I'll set it onto the objects. This also wipes out anything that was in the publisher dropdown. All right, so we've set the model, and now we're going to, again, walk through the query and fill the object. Same line of code as before. Execute query, SQL. It's angry because it wants me to try catch. Give it its own try catch. I'll use my same J option pane instead of the logger. Loggers are great for production apps because they let you see what's happening. J option panes let you as the user know what the heck's going on. Oops, that's wrong. Okay, so like before, I'll walk through it. This time I'll call the constructor, and I'll do I'll pull out the publisher code and the publisher name. I know I'm going quickly, but we did this in the last video that I will put a link to in the early parts of this video. So I create my objects, I add it to my model. Run it. There's my publishers. Looks like I need to make the box a little wider, but they definitely are there. The beautiful thing about this is I have a listing of the publisher names, but behind the scenes I also have the primary key that matches it up. All right, so let's continue. I'll widen that form up in a minute. So I'll widen this puppy up. Okay, so at this point, we've populated the boxes, which is great because the users, when they run this thing, they can't screw up and pick something that they don't know is a publisher name. They can't enter in the wrong data type because we have it here. You know, it's protecting your data, which database people are always worried about. They're always worried about their data not being entered correctly. So you're guaranteeing that the users at least pick those two correctly. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to handle the actual writing. I'm going to go to my Save the Table button. So I double click it and you end up in the code for save action. What we need to do here is we need to make sure that the users correctly enter in the objects. Now I'm going to test one for time purposes, but you guys can test the rest of them. I'm going to verify that my book code is there and it's 4 characters long. If it's not there, or if it's not 4 characters long, I'm not going to let you go on. This, when it's valid, I will call a method called writeRecords that'll do exactly what it says. I'm going to put that right here. WriteRecords and have the actual insert into SQL. So inside a save action button, I'm going to assume it's valid, and I'm going to if it. So I'm going to get the text. The length's not equal 4 because my book code is character 4. If you didn't know where I got that, I did describe book, and you see it's char 4. So these are 4 characters long. They have to be 4 characters long, so I'm forcing it. If it's not 4, I'm going to set this valid flag. And then later on, after I check all the other ones, so if valid is true, I should write the records. If I'm going to yell at my users or verify with my users, I should tell them what's going on. So we give them this run. Let's verify, see if it works. Run this thing. Don't put anything in book code. Save the table. Yay, it yells at me. Okay, so I know it works. write record is going to write a book out. And again, we're going to do this the correct way, so I'm going to generate a class called book. In book, I'm going to use this construct. I'm going to use it all because I have to generate a code, a title, a publisher, a paperback. So that matches my structure. I could use char, it's just easier to deal with string. As always, insert code, constructors, give me a blank one. Insert code, give yourself the constructor, get the parameterized one. Setters and getters. I don't need a toString in this one because I'm not going to do anything with it necessarily. But if you were paranoid, insert a toString. It'll allow you to test later if need be. So I've got my object or my class that I can build an object with. And I'm going to build that up here in writeBook. If I get to writeBook, my assumption is that all my ifs down here pass, thus valid is true, thus I can write the book to disk. So in write record, I'm going to instantiate a variable of type book. And then I'm doing this because I can do some really cool things since I built a class. When I looked at everything in my book database, I noticed that these are all caps. The X's and things are all uppercase. So I'm going to force that. I can do that in my class. So my class, my setter, I can say here, here's my set book code. I can force it to uppercase. That way when I pass it in here, it's guaranteed to be uppercase. Without me thinking about it, I can do it up here as well in the constructor. This forces every time I use book code, it's in uppercase. Saves you the hassle of doing it here because it'll be done automatically. So I'm going to fill my title and my book code simply by stripping right off the screen. And I'm using that get text function to pull the string out. I could also get paranoid and worry about stuff at the end of it and trim. But that's just if I'm worried about people hitting extra spaces. Type is also as simple. I'm going to skip publish for a minute. Since my type box is simply strings, I'm going to pull right out of this combo box. I'm going to use get selected item here. You have to cast it to a string because by default get selected item returns back an object. You can't set a string as an object, so you just cast it over. So that one's easy. But publisher is a little more complicated. I need to pull the object off the screen and then pull out the publisher code from the object. So I'm going to pull from the combo box for publisher. Again, get selected item. So it gets the actual object that's picked. Pub now holds whether I picked Arkham or Hill House or whomever I happen to pick. And I'll use that here. Set the pub code to be pub.get pub code. So these two lines are really cool. on the screen, I pick an English name. Behind the scenes, I write the code. No ifing, no casing, no anything except primary key lookups. Paperback is similar in construct, as I have to deal with if it's selected. If it's selected, it means it's a paperback. So it's either yes or no. Okay, so what I've done is I've built my object. Create a book, sets the book code, the title, the chosen type, the chosen publisher code, and whether it's a paperback or not. All of that matches this structure back in MySQL. Now I need to write it. I'm going to build a SQL, and I'm going to use string concatenation to put all this stuff in here. I'm going to use the cool format method. This is actually the whole point of this project, is to write, but the populating of the drop-down boxes is something you really should think about, because as you go forward, it's the right way to go. So I'm going to use string.format, which, as you might recall, takes a string, and inside the string are format specifiers. And as you know from SQL, I have to put strings inside of single quotes. So I'm building %s's, says string placeholders. They're all in single quotes. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. Close the parenthesis. Args now have to match up with the %s's. I'm going to press enter so you can see this. And the order of them is book code, title, publisher, type, paperback. So that's the order I'll build. Title. Pub codes, type, and then paperback. I'm paranoid, so I'm going to write this off the screen for a minute, and I'm going to test it. So if I've done anything correctly, book code will be here, surrounded by single quotes, title, pub code, type, paperback. Let's run it. So I'm going to create the test book code. This is a test. Oh, let's go with Berkeley and let's make it philosophy. Hit save the table. Here's my SQL. Looks clean. Open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close, 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 insert into. So now there's the proof of the pudding. Copy, go over to MySQL, paste it, one row affected, woohoo! I'll start from book, and there it is. So my SQL was correctly built from my Java. Now to get rid of it, I'm just going to delete. Do this one right, or else you wipe your table. So I know my query is good. I can comment this out, and now I have query. I can connect to my database. I'll close. It'll be angry, surround with a try catch. Oops. Surround the statement, not the block. I'll put my favorite little J-option pane in there. Again, log is good for production. I'm not logging. and I'll write the query. To write the query, I call the SQL statement. This time I just run execute. Execute does not return back a result set. Execute returns back Boolean. Basically, did it run or not? I could create a Boolean variable here and say if this worked, then display to the user, but I'm not going to. So run this thing. Let's create a book. 1, 2, 3, L. A lowercase to prove the L works. Book title, some cool stuff. Basic, horror. Let's make a paperback. Save the table. Cool, no errors, I'll X out. Come over to here. Select star. Some cool stuff. Pop it up, it works. All right, that's it for this particular assignment. What you learned was how to execute insert commands from Java. You also revisited how to populate a drop-down box with the contents of the database. See ya.